Hey guys, hope you're all having an amazing day. So I'm very excited to say that in today's video, we're going to be covering the rousing rise and disheartening demise of my personal favorite game of all time, Star Wars Battlefront 2. For my OG fans, you guys would know how important this game has been both to me and the channel, as it was the first game that I ever streamed shortly after I started creating content. It could be argued that Star Wars Battlefront 2 has had the most unique and eventful journey of any game ever, which started before the full game even released. From greedy EA microtransactions to massive game-changing DLCs, this game has seen it all, and I thought that it would make for an interesting video. Before we jump into things, I just wanted to thank Darth Maul 516, who allowed me to use some of his footage for this video. I'll have his channel pinned in the description for those who want to check him out. He is an awesome creator and such a nice guy who I had the pleasure of jamming with a long time ago in a galaxy far away. As always, if you guys want to see more videos just like this one, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and leave a comment with your thoughts on Battlefront 2's journey below. And without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Like all great things in life, it all started with a meme.
Sector is clear. Not clear. Not clear. Sector is clear. Not clear. Not clear.
And the open beta, which was a massive hit. The beta showcased the stunning invasion of Naboo and the new Galactic Assault mode. Throughout the 5-day period, players were able to check out the various classes, vehicles, and most importantly, heroes. Personally, this was the best beta I've played of any game. The game looked absolutely stunning. The leveling and battle point systems were awesome and allowed those who performed better with access to stronger characters during the match. Also, force choking a bunch of enemies with Maul and throwing them to Narnia has still never gotten old to this day. Life was great, and it seemed as though the stage was set for an absolute banger of a game until... EA strikes again. Upon launch, a modified star card system was implemented in which players would either put a ludicrous amount of hours into the game or buy a ludicrous amount of loot boxes that could of course be bought with real money to upgrade their characters, providing them with an extensive variety of buffs. The overwhelming wave of excitement turned to disappointment flooded the Star Wars community, as what would soon become a massively successful title was tainted once again by the greed of a large gaming corporation. Luckily for Star Wars fans, this was removed shortly after launch. However, this seemingly irreparable amount of damage had already been done, and it was estimated that the substantial amount of negative publicity reduced sales by roughly 3 million. Honestly, this has to be one of, if not the worst example of pay to win I have ever seen, as the star card system is the cornerstone of character progression, and a certain star card could be the difference between dominating or getting stomped, especially earlier on in the game for heroes like Boba Fett, who in the right hands could pretty much fly forever and insta-kill most enemy heroes with his rocket barrage. Once the microtransactions had been removed and the star card system was refined, I feel as though the game was in a pretty good state. You got the opportunity to take part in pivotal battles from across the galaxy in all 3 eras, including the raid on Kamino and Kashyyyk, the attack on the Death Star, and the rescue mission at Starkiller Base. You were also able to take control of staple heroes and villains to the franchise, such as Darth Maul, Yoda, Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Rey, and Kylo Ren. They also reworked the Heroes vs Villains mode from the first Battlefront, and let me tell you, I think I jammed this mode for like a week straight when the game first dropped. I think they did an awesome job with this now fast-paced, action-packed mode where heroes and villains could battle it out at really cool locations such as the Death Star and the Royal Palace of Thebes. Things were going pretty good at this time. However, like any game without new content, replayability was becoming a growing issue with the game. Keep in mind that shortly after launch, there were only limited characters and maps to play on. In my opinion, there wasn't too much replayability in the Starfighter modes. Heroes vs Villains was really enjoyable, but would get repetitive if you played too much, and the Galactic Assault mode, while super immersive and challenging, felt restrictive at times, as you couldn't just go wherever you wanted and were stuck battling around a focused objective. On the other hand, I think from launch to the release of the Clone Wars DLC, the game overall was still pretty underrated due to the terrible launch of the game, as a prominent chunk of initial players saw the microtransaction based progression system and didn't really touch the game again, which is really sad. Moving forward, DICE did a really good job in resolving this issue with the consistent release of free DLCs, starting with The Last Jedi, which saw Finn and Captain Phasma added to the game. Shortly after, the Han Solo season began in celebration of the Solo movie, which included the new map Kessel, the return of Jabba's palace from the first Battlefront, and the new mode Hero Showdown, which was a 2v2 of heroes and villains, which is pretty enjoyable but very sweaty, might I add. Now, while these DLCs did add a breath of fresh air into the game with the addition of well-designed maps, cosmetics, game modes, and characters, I still felt as though something was missing. Overall, the modes hadn't really changed too much, and while the new characters were enjoyable, that refreshing feeling that came with the new content would inevitably dissipate. We needed something more, and then it came.
Taken. The Clone Wars have begun.
The announcement of arguably the biggest and most hyped DLC of any game, the Clone Wars. This DLC was massive, including new heroes such as General Grievous, Count Dooku, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin Skywalker. The return of OG Battlefront maps, Geonosis and Felucia, the addition of game-changing reinforcements such as the Droideka, Commando Droid, ARC Trooper, and Clone Commander, and finally, the absolutely unreal return of the OG, classic, vintage masterpiece of a game mode known as Capital Supremacy. This DLC was the second win that Battlefront 2 desperately needed, and after its release, the player base grew more than 10 times, which is insane. Star Wars Battlefront 2 felt like a completely new game with really enjoyable game modes, an extensive range of heroes, villains, and reinforcements to choose from. After the release of this DLC was when, for me, this game became top tier and over time my favorite game of all time. Everything was
perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
I mean, other than the fact that Anakin upon release was one of the most broken things I have ever seen, but we don't talk about that. Star Wars fans were for one of the only times ever satisfied and fulfilled with the content they were receiving, and it didn't stop there. Not long after the release of the Clone Wars DLC, The Rise of Skywalker, Age of Rebellion, and Battle of Scarif DLCs were also introduced. This included major expansions to the Capital Supremacy mode, the addition of BB-8 and BB-9E heroes, and of course the map Scarif. Sadly, this was the last major content update for the game, which is disappointing for a number of reasons that I will get into shortly, but for now, let's stick to the positives of this remarkable game. Roughly 8 months after the release of the last major content drop, Battlefront 2 became free on both PlayStation and the Epic Games Store, and the player base absolutely soared, so much so that the servers physically couldn't handle the influx of players, and they actually had to come back and do some server maintenance, which was insane. As for the PlayStation servers, there weren't any significant issues. However, it was amazing to see all the lobbies for all the various modes full of new players. I just think it is incredible that a game roughly 4 years old at the time could achieve this unbelievable feat, and is another reason why the journey of Battlefront 2 is something to behold. Now that we've covered the game's life cycle, it is time to discuss the sad truth behind why this amazing game was essentially abandoned with no new content after Scarif and barely even any balance changes or patches to keep the game in a healthy state. I think to best cover the situation, I first need to provide some context. At the time EA decided to stop working on the game, they still had exclusive gaming rights to the Star Wars license. Now, Star Wars, like Harry Potter or Marvel, is a license that is pretty much guaranteed to provide a substantial return on investment, purely because these titles have such dedicated and extensive fan bases, so much to the point that they will buy even the worst game purely because it has the title attached to it. Well, this has to be one of the biggest wastes of a title I have ever seen. To maintain credibility, it is important that I stay as objective as possible, even though I am a massive Star Wars fan. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Jedi Fallen Order was an amazing title, and I strongly believe that the sequel, Jedi Survivor, will follow in its footsteps. However, other than that, they really squandered an amazing opportunity to create some awesome titles and consequently make a butt ton of money. Rather than investing more resources into Battlefront 2 to keep a game that has proven time and time again to have so much potential, they decided to dedicate their manpower towards creating Battlefield 2042, which turned out to be, and I'm not going to mince words here, an absolutely terrible game, especially considering that they had a surefire formula for success that they just had to capitalize on in Battlefront 2. I'm sure you guys would have loved to see, as much as me, more maps like Mustafar, Dagobah, or even Polis Massa. New heroes like Mace Windu, Qui-Gon Jinn, Savage Opress, Cad Bane, Ahsoka, screw it, even Jabba the Hutt. My point is, there was so much potential for new and exciting content to keep the game thriving, or alternatively, they could have worked on a new title, Battlefront 3, with new maps, heroes, and refined mechanics and gameplay balancing. Personally, I think Star Wars Battlefront 2 is the most prime example of wasted potential I have ever seen, and I am honestly so glad that EA has lost exclusivity so that now other publishers like Ubisoft can create some awesome new titles with the license. While it is very saddening thinking about what it could have been, I'm still grateful they were able to turn Battlefront 2 around and into the masterpiece of a game that I am proud to call my favorite game of all time. Like I said earlier, this game will always hold a special place in my heart as it was the first game I ever streamed on the channel. So thank you so much for your continued support, as without you guys, I wouldn't have even been able to put this video together. Thank you once again for all your amazing support, and if you guys want to see more videos just like this one, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and leave a comment with your thoughts on Battlefront 2's journey below, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.